yeah, I think I love the colour blue. And I say, okay, what does it mean to you? Oh, it reminds me of the ocean. But what does that mean to you? Because it could be someone living in the bush. And I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? Or a city. And they'll say, oh, well, actually, it actually reminds me of like coastal holidays we used to take when I was kids, and I loved it. And I'm like, that is the emotion. It's not about the colour. It's about what is the emotion that it evokes for you? What is the memory it evokes for you? And when you can link a memory to a positive feeling, that's what you want to bring back or inject into a space.
Welcome to the Design Dialogues, the podcast where we dive deep into the business of interior design. I'm Beth Beesky, the founder of More Time to Design and a designer with over 13 years of experience. I'm here to help you navigate the challenges of running a successful studio, whether you're a solo designer or leading a team. Each week, I chat with industry experts and share practical insights to help you streamline your processes, grow your business, and create a studio that thrives. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy our Design Dialogues. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Design Dialogues podcast. And this week I am joined by Michelle from Michelle Canny Interiors. Hi Michelle.
Hi, how are you, Beth?
Good, thank you so much for joining me. So I always love to start by finding out, what can you see out your window today?
Yeah, it's getting a bit darker now, but outside I can see, so I live in Nelson Bay in Port Stephens, and I back onto a bushland, so I can see a lot of the big taller gum trees outside, and I can hear a lot of the bird life. So we have a lot of different bird species that live in and amongst us. So that's what I can see outside, actually.
Oh, beautiful. So if anyone can hear the cockatoos that are squawking in my backyard at the moment, or Michelle's cacophony of birds, then we'll have a bit of a bird song background to today's episode. So tell me a little bit about your interior design journey.
Yeah, sure. So I didn't start out much like yourself as an interior designer. I actually did, my background was in marketing and advertising. And when I first started, I did a degree in marketing and comms, only to then work in ad agencies and realise, this is not my jam at all. I realised I didn't want to sell my soul to sell a product, and I also didn't want to work 80 hours for peanuts. So I sort of, it's easy to kind of get caught up in the glam and get a bit burnt out. And so I'd always been creative, and I think because I've lived in lots of different homes and things like that, I'd always had a bit of an eye for things like design, but didn't really know what to do with that. And it wasn't until a few people had said, like, have you, thought about studying design? You'd be really good at it. And I was a bit like, oh, I don't know about that. But anyway, I swallowed my pride, and I enrolled in the International School of Colour and Design in Sydney. So that was before I lived in Melbourne at the time, and it wasn't open then, back in 2013. And so I studied via correspondence. And so I would come to Sydney with all my coursework and things like that, and, get it assessed.
Oh, wow.
So that was it was a very daunting experience, because it was the first time I'd really put my creative ideas out there, for the public, I suppose, to, for someone to really critique, which was different to a degree in a comms space and comms and marketing, because that's all learnt stuff. Whereas, when you're learning design, you are learning, you're learning like the core stuff, but it's also a lot about creative interpretation of how in which you would do things and how to create spaces and things like that. So
it's so subjective.
So subjective. So it's very nerve-wracking, but I really enjoyed it. And from there, once I'd finished that, I finished my studies. I was pregnant with my first son, and after I had him, I remember I was on mat leave from my job at the time, and I remember, and I don't know why this sticks in my head, but I guess it was a poignant moment. It was like my light bulb moment. I was cleaning the toilet in a dressing gown. I looked disgusting. I think I'd had a few hours sleep. My son was asleep.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, is this really all there is? Like, is this what I'm going to be doing for life? Like, is this me now? I don't want to die.
I reckon most new mums have had that thought to themselves at some point.
Some of us have it at 3 a.m. Some of us had it in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
I just thought to myself, why don't I just start practicing, what I'd learned? And whilst I wasn't ready to go out and start a full-fledged business, I had thought to myself, no, I could write, because the one thing I did love about the comms side of my degree and things like that was that I absolutely loved writing. So I started a blog about interior design ideas for people with kids, because that's the space that I was in. And I started to reach suppliers and just sort of say to them who I was and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to write a blog about these, certain pieces that they had, and how I wondered if I could feature their pieces and link back to their pages. And they were like, yeah, a lot of people, 9 times out of 10, people were like, yeah, absolutely, I'd love that, share the link with me. It was still early days of all that sort of stuff. So I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. Who am I? But I did it. And it just kind of took off. And then from there, people were like, do you provide this as a service? And I was like, oh, no. Because, again, it was the inner talk of, and I think because I didn't go to business school as such, like I didn't know, I knew the fundamentals of interior design, but I didn't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
So it was basically from there that things sort of started to get traction. And at the time, it just happened that, unfortunately, my grandfather passed. And he left me a little bit of money, not much. It was about $3,000 or something, but it was enough at the time to get me a basic website up and running. And I actually spent the remaining money on a coach who helped me understand the fundamentals of setting up a business and how to do it, and what I had to look out for, and what I had to put in place, and all sorts of things like that. And that's just basically evolved over the years. And I've just learned more and more. And, I've learned from mistakes. I've, had a lot of different encounters with lots of different people. And that's kind of how Michelle Canny Interiors was born, really.
I love that. I love that kind of moment of just, I'm just going to give it a go. And it's like, so often that moment comes almost from desperation. Like, it's kind of like, I've got to do something here. Like, I can't just keep doing the same thing over and over. They're not always this, like, I'm just going to give it a go moments. They're not always, bright and shiny. Sometimes they come from quite dark places.
It was definitely from that. It was more of that, like almost like desperation, because I knew I would have to go back to that other job, and I knew that that's not what I wanted to do, and I knew that my soul had another calling. It was like, and I couldn't quite know what it was, because I don't come, funnily enough, my grandparents were quite creative, like musicians and things like that, and into the arts, but my parents themselves are not creative in the slightest. So I've always been this black sheep who was like, I think I'm going to do this. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
Why? How? And I'm like, I don't know. And I never know the how exactly, but I know the why.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important part. Like, I think, the how you can learn, that's the bit you can learn. The why you can't learn. No. The why has got to come from inside.
Yeah. And for me, it's always been really important. Like, I didn't set out to start a business to be a millionaire. I didn't start out to do, all I've ever wanted to do is help others and create a life I loved, and be able to work that in amongst my family as obviously life progressed and I had another child and things like that. Like, it became all about the lifestyle for me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So one of the projects that you have been working on for the last little while is your own home. And I think as creatives, getting to work on our own home is a bit of a double-edged sword, because, we see everything and we want it, next bright, shiny items kind of thing. But for you particularly, there was a really kind of special part that you wanted to focus on, and that was designing with your neurodiverse son in mind and making it a home that was accommodating and comfortable for him. Tell me a little bit about how you went about that, and what kind of things did you think about? And I suppose for designers, if we are working with people who are neurodiverse, what are some of the things we should be thinking about?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of the times, people often will see things, and because we've got so much different ideas out there now, you've got Instagram, you've got Pinterest, you've got many, many ways in which you get so much inspiration. But I think one of the biggest things people forget often is like the aesthetics is one thing, but at the end of the day, when you're designing for people, especially people who may be neurodiverse, or autistic, ADHD, any of the types, any type of people that may have some form of impairment or disability, it has to be first and foremost functional. And it's so often overlooked because people want the bright and shiny beauty, but that's not always functional. So for me, the space when I first started to plan this home, because when we bought it, it had no power, no water. It was filled with 1950s-ish, 60s wallpaper throughout that was baked in walls, like from years and years and years. One area of the home, and it was all different wallpaper, so it wasn't just one retro type. It was very much a diverse range of it. One area looked like an old Chinese restaurant. It was pretty gross. Like it had these old bridges, and people used to say to me, "Oh my God, you should have kept that." And I was like, "You can keep that, not me." So, but funnily enough, there were elements of this home, like we had to gut this home because it just, in terms of its spatial layout, in terms of its light, in terms of the overall feel of the space, and how we wanted to create something that was soothing, calm, and has a certain level of organisation to it, because that's really important to neurodiverse people. These are some big considerations for us. And so I also wanted to retain, though, some of the original heritage items. So for me, I have a big love of antique brass, and that was informed by the old antique brass handles that were on the doors of all the. So we've got the original hardwood doors, and we kept all those because they retained that original sense of the home. But the other reason for keeping those was also for acoustics, because hardwood doors will often block noise out more than what the doors that are hollow. But it was when I started to think about these, and I sort of put on my sensory design hat, it was things like layout, texture, colour, scent, lighting. They were the things that can be used to create calm and stimulating environments. And so when we started to think about things like, when it came down to the original, even mood boards for me, I had to be really mindful of, okay, well, what are the kind of soothing colours that I want throughout the home? And I knew there would need to be probably some form of a neutral, but not some form of a stark white, and also not something that's too warm, but something that had more of that in-between neutral, because certain colours have a stimulating effect. So more warmer colours will always have more of a stimulating effect on our senses. So there's sort of the reds and the yellows, and because they're more seen as bright colours, or they're more seen as like emotion evoking colours. So a lot of the colour that you will see throughout especially my children's rooms, is more neutral base, but blues and greens and light greys.
Yeah,
So
wow.
they are the more soothing colours, and it makes them. It makes a lot of neurodiverse children. They don't. It's too much if they've got too much pattern, and it doesn't need to be a complete beige. But if it's too much colour, too much pattern, too much going on, it's just distracting.
Yeah.
And that makes them feel less in control of themselves and of their emotions. So I knew it had to be relaxed. I knew it had to be calming. And so when I started to put together some of the samples of things, when it came to things like the bench tops, the splashback tiles, the tiles for the bathrooms, the cabinetry finish, all of that, I got the samples, and I got my son Angus to touch them.
Yep.
And then I asked him how he felt about it. So sometimes he would say, "Oh, Mum, no, I don't like that tile. It's too reflective."
Yep.
I may not have even perceived it that way, but he did.
Yep.
And okay, that's fine. And other things might have been, "Oh no, that feels too coarse." that floor tile, I don't like it. It feels too coarse on my feet. Okay, no problems. And so the reason why I asked him these questions is because the way in which he interacts with these surfaces on an everyday basis could mean the difference between him not feeling comfortable to have a shower in the bathroom
Yep.
and him feeling like he's totally at ease.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, because and people don't often they don't consider this, I think, because a lot of people, especially those of us who are neurotypical, we will go, oh no, that's fine, that's not shiny, that's not too smooth,
Yeah.
that's not too reflective. But that's because that's how we interact with it, not how someone else does.
Yeah. And I think that's so interesting. Like, obviously you know your son so well. So like it's almost like I can imagine you would have so much insight into him
Mm,
and, how he, and you would also be able to almost give him the language that he needs to explain this stuff to you. But I imagine I find that really interesting. Like if a designer is working with a family that have like neurodiverse members, that exercise of actually getting them to tell you how they interpret a material or how they feel about a material would be really crucial, because we all interpret things differently,
mm.
and seeing how they interpret something is so important. I mean, it's no different from what you would do with any of your clients, really.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I think it's having that awareness of
Yeah,
how someone is going to interact with that finish or that surface, or how does it feel, or is it,
yeah,
especially maybe with tiles that can feel some of them can feel very tactile on your
yeah,
feet, and like how do you feel about that kind of thing? So I
yeah.
think that's so important.
Because sometimes he would, I often use the the emotions wheel, because often
Yeah.
we can experience a certain amount of emotions. For example, I know I'm happy, I know I'm sad, I know I'm, joyful, I know I'm angry. And they're just basics. But what we don't often, we're not able to articulate is the broader spectrum of emotions that we feel as human beings. So sometimes with him,
Yeah.
he will say, oh, this makes me feel stressed. And I will say, okay, well, what about it makes you feel stressed? Let's look at the wheel. And I'll say, oh, does it make you feel like, is it because, and he'll say, oh, there's too much going on. There's too much noise. And I'm like, do you mean noise as in what you're hearing? And he's like, no, as in around me. So, you know, and what that means to you, I'm like, so do you feel is it overwhelming you? And he's like, yes. So
Yeah.
it's ways like that, with him, I understand that, and I know for many people, and I think what a lot of people don't understand is that often the way in which you feel in a space is completely dictated by the senses and the way in which it makes you feel. So,
So true.
when you walk into a space, it may be a beautifully designed home, but if it was a really obnoxious colour, like a really loud colour, it could actually give you a bit of a headache, make you feel like your head is hurting because it's psychologically
Yes.
impacting you. Or it could
Yeah.
be if you walk into a space and, for example, it could be really echoey. And so the
Mm.
noise, is playing on you, or you could live in a really dense urban area. It could be very loud. So you
Yeah.
may consider certain fabrics and things like that that will, lessen that noise, and then focus on more natural sounds around you. They're the things I do for Angus. I'll play an app for him that, albeit we don't live in necessarily a massive urban area, but I will often have things such as like water sounds or rain
Yep.
sounds on an app for him to help him
Yep.
soothe and calm. I have, for him, touch is a very big thing. So textures in a home, it has a massive impact on our bodies. And the types of fabrics we choose play a big part in how we feel or experience a space. So for him, he he hates the feeling of anything, the sort of like synthetics and things like that. He can't stand it, or even silk. He or satin or something. Not that he really have
Yep.
a 9-year-old doesn't have satin sheets, but he doesn't like feel like, to him, that
Yeah.
slippery kind of a weird feel.
Yep.
So it's like he has a lot of things such as like cotton, bamboo, linen, anything that's sort of
Yep.
breathable and airy because he gets quite hot. Um,
Yep.
in the winter, he likes more sort of flannelette or warmer style blankets, something that has a bit of weight to it,
Yep.
which gives him that sense of protection and feeling safeness and soothed. So, and even down to to reduce the noise in his room, I have blackout curtains and shears so that he can get the natural light. 'Cause natural light
Yep.
is a massive impact as well in bringing wellness into a home.
Mm.
I just anything that he has or he wears, it's basically based on stuff that doesn't cause irritation to him, and even
Mm.
like the rugs, a very plush feeling rug, so that if he's feeling a little bit overstimulated, things like that, as soon as he feels that touch, it can automatically start to bring him down. So it's
Yeah.
there's a huge impact, I think, and I think people forget that lighting, sound, smell, taste. I mean, we don't taste interior, but even when you think about when you go, say, for example, to an open home and they have the smell
Yeah.
of fresh coffee, they do that intentionally.
It's the best. It's the best.
Yeah.
Um, I just find this so interesting, and I think like one of the things that like like even though we're kind of talking about this in the application of designing for someone who is is neurodivergent, I actually just think this is what a good designer should be doing for all of their clients, because
Mm,
really how so much of our job is actually like there is the aesthetic obviously, but
yeah.
it is like we want our clients to walk in the front door and just go, I'm home, it's my sanctuary. Now what my sanctuary is going to be different from lots of people.
Yeah.
Everyone is going to feel differently. One of the things that I find really interesting is around like the whole color drenching thing at the moment,
Mm,
which I love, and it looks beautiful
yeah.
in magazine images. But I think for a lot of people, they would find that overwhelming and quite stressful.
Yeah.
Like that sense of being completely surrounded by a color. And if the color was just slightly off, like as you said, like a warm color, like that would be so stimulating. And for some people, it would be great. And in the right application, it would be amazing.
Mm,
But use wrongly, like the wrong color,
yeah.
and that room, it might look amazing, but the actual feeling that you get when you're in there would feel so off. And I think as designers, we are most probably a bit heightened to it. Like I think I can always tell when there's something wrong with the color, like it just feels wrong, or
Yeah.
it's like I go, oh, this is not quite
Mm,
right.
yeah.
Might look pretty, but I'm just like, oh, it's just not quite right.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but I think the other thing that I found, like what you were saying, which I think is so important, is that we help clients, we give them the language
Mm,
so that they can give feedback to us. Because so often people will go, I don't like it, but I don't know why I don't like it. It just
yeah.
doesn't sit right.
Yeah.
And so often as our job as in designers, whether it's, neurodiverse or neurotypical or just,
Yeah.
humans, we actually have to help them find the language
Mm.
to give us the feedback that we need. And that is a real skill that I think you get a lot better with the more you do it. And, I think it is one of those things that just comes with experience. But learning how to help your client give you feedback is crucial.
Oh, 100%. I think it's so key what you said. There's sometimes what I say to clients, so color can be quite psychological. And so sometimes I'll say to someone, okay, so so how do you want the space to feel? Not so much how do you want it to look, how do you want it to feel?
Mm,
And when they
mm,
describe, and I get them to use as many descriptive words as they can. And, sometimes I will bring along, other words just to help
yeah,
articulate it. And it's really interesting because sometimes people will say to me, yeah, I think I love the color blue. And I say, okay, what does it mean to you? Oh, it reminds me of the ocean. But what does that mean to you? Because it could be someone living in the bush. And I'm like, okay, so what does
yeah,
that mean? Or a city. And they'll say, oh, well, actually, it actually reminds me of like coastal holidays we used to take when I was kids and I loved it.
yeah.
And I'm like, that is the emotion. It's not about the color. It's
No,
about what is the emotion that it evokes for you? What is the memory it evokes for you? And when you can link a memory to a positive feeling, that's what you want to bring back into or inject into a space.
Yeah.
And rightly so, like opposite. I remember when I lived in Melbourne, there was this new building. I think it was the Chevron building, which was it was a big, architecturally fancy build at the time. But the biggest thing I thought that was so weird was when my friend lived in this apartment complex. So when I would come out of the lift, all the hallway walls were painted a lime green yellow, as in really bright, like the like slice ice cream for Australians who
Yeah.
know slice ice cream. Uh, and it was
Yep.
intense. And every single time, without a doubt, as soon as I entered that hall, I used to do this automatic, not meaning to, but because the color felt like it was
Yeah.
closing in on me. And in
Yeah.
my mind, I kept thinking, and I wasn't even in design then, and I always thought to myself, who on earth chose this color? Why? Why would you?
I
This
know.
does not make me want to, this does not make me feel like I'm walking into a glamorous entryway of a really nice apartment block. It makes me feel like I want to bolt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just could never understand it. And that's why color, like you said, rightly so, it's like I can understand the application, I can understand the use of color drenching, but color drenching, I think, like you said, done in the wrong way, can have the most opposite and most disturbing effect almost, as opposed to if it's meant to be a kind of calm and welcoming space. And I think it depends on the application again. Like if you were to do color drenching in a restaurant and you combined it with particular types of fabrics, particular types of lighting,
Yeah.
and it was part of an overall to set the vibe of the place,
Yeah.
great. But as an interior in a home, I don't think so.
Yeah, I know. And it's something, it's the magic that we create, isn't it? Because with the right lights and it all kind of works. But I do just often think so often, I think that it's actually tapping into what do you want your client to feel when they're in the space. It's the same when, people talk about clothes, like it's not how you look, but it's how the clothes make you feel. So like if you've got a big important meeting on, you'll most probably, you might put the blazer on and get your nails done because that'll make you feel
Yeah,
10 centimeters
yeah,
taller, and like
yeah.
it just makes you feel like you've got it.
Putting on
And
lipstick, feel
that's
more confident. Yeah,
exactly. And I just think so often we need, as interior designers, we need to go, instead of asking how we want the room to look, we
yes,
really should start with how do you want to feel when you're in this space?
yeah.
Because that is kind of what we need to get to the bottom of.
And half the battle, I think, is selling clients on that idea. So,
Mm,
like I was saying before this, I met with a client today, and lovely client, but what I think they couldn't quite, they wanted it to make it feel like their property was this modern coastal property with that as soon as they entered, they felt relaxed, but they also wanted a bit of a wow factor. And the biggest thing
mm,
was walking into the current space was everything was out of proportion. So it was all really large furniture trying to fit in a really small space. And it already had a set color palette. So anything that you do to go against that, it was already a lot of grays and things like that. Unless you're going to change that, you're not, unless you're going to change your flooring, your paint,
mm.
all of that. You can't just put a cushion on it and hope that it's going to transform the entire room. It
No,
doesn't.
cushion's not going to cut it.
No, no, it won't. So it won't change it. So what I was trying to get her to understand was that whilst if you keep the existing furniture, you will get the same result and feel as what you've got currently.
Yeah.
It feels cramped. It feels out of proportion, and it feels uber contemporary. And that's because judging by the furniture and things like that. And that's not what you're saying you want. That's not the feeling that you want.
Mm,
And so, I was trying to educate her that if we introduce colors, such as the blues and the greens, things that are synonymous with the overall coastal landscape that you live in, if we introduce more biophilic design, so introducing more plants into the space, if we, have more softer fabrics, whether that be the cushions, the throws, the rug, and then the furniture, making it more like bringing in the warmth. It's got tile, bringing warmth, timber furniture, like real classic pieces. This is how. And, change the lighting to more of a warmer style bulbs rather than the uber cool bulbs that create kind of harsh light, a lot of reflection on the surfaces. Like, that's how we're going to create this more relaxed, coastal, modern vibe that you want. It will not cut it by just putting a cushion on a lounge.
No.
Yeah, it's not about spending money for the sake of spending money. It's about being intentional.
Yes, so true. So true.
Yeah.
So you are a busy working mum, 2 kids, own business, life is busy. Yeah. What is one productivity hack you use in your studio that you swear by?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro timer.
Yeah.
That could be because because my mother's Italian, so I like the word Pomodoro for tomato. But what I do love about it is I love the fact that, it helps you get things done, and it can help you break up your tasks into bite-sized pieces, like of 25, individual tasks broken up, say 25 minutes or 30 minutes a piece. And then you have a break and you have regular intervals. And I find that helps me stay productive, because I am a little bit hard. Sometimes I find motivation and focus a little bit hard, because being a working mum, I will jump to different things, if the kids are around, which generally they're at school, but if they are, it's sort of like, I'll do the washing, I'll do this, I'll do that. And I'm also like, I don't know if you know much about human design. I'm a manifesting generator, so I move from task to task to task quite seamlessly. That's sort of how I roll. So I find it really helps me be accountable, and it helps me stay accountable, and it helps me stay focused and motivated into that one task, because then I know that a break is coming up, and then I can look back at the end of the day and go, oh, great, I've actually completed those tasks that I set myself. So that's, for me, the timer is a good one.
I'm a big fan of the timer as well. I use that all the time. And it's because I'm like, there are 200 things that I could be doing in this moment. And if I quite often get to like the 10-minute mark and my brain will start to wander, and I'm like, no, you just have to focus for another 10 minutes. It's just like 10 more minutes. You can do it, kind of thing. And I really, I've used it on and off my whole career, but I've particularly put it in board about 6 months ago, where I was really militant with it. I was like, right, we're going to really stick with this. And just the feeling of going from getting to the end of the day and actually, instead of having 20 half completed tasks, I now have 10 completed tasks that I can tick off my list and I can move on with, kind of thing. So, I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro timer. I think it is so simple, but it's so amazing.
Simple. Yeah, I just find I'm very much like you. After about 10 minutes, I'm like, and especially if it's things in the business that I don't want to do as much, like, the admin side or the finance side, I'm like, but I know I have to. And so, I am very much like that. And I also like listening to, I will have some either uplifting or calming music, depending on what kind of mood I'm in or what kind of day I've had so far. I find that it's it's almost like just a background thing for me, and it helps me stay enthusiastic about what I'm doing, because I sort of feel like I'm listening to something, and it makes me feel uplifted, and focused. So I enjoy that.
Yeah, I'm another one, especially if the morning school run has been a little bit hectic. I will quite often come back and pump the tunes. It's like a reset. Like, we're starting the day again, and this is what I do. So it's like 20. The timer goes on, and I usually it's usually going through emails, but I'm like, let's start the day again.
Yeah, I often will. I'll put on tunes that I know no one else is around, so then I'll pump
Yeah.
them so I can sing along, and I don't have my kids criticizing me, telling me not to.
I love
So
it.
I
So
more enjoyable.
tell me, what excites you about our industry at the moment?
I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I know some people hate it, and I can see where that comes from. But I think artificial intelligence, like AI, is pretty exciting. And I
It's
know
really exciting.
I get it. I get why people are like, no, I understand the negatives of what it can do for the industry in terms of maybe setting up false expectations, people not understanding that to get that finished is going to cost you X amount of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases, depends on what it is. But the thing that I think is great is I think that it's great for 3D visualization, personalization, and even optimizing a space. And these are the things that clients often, they cannot. So often when we are in a client meeting and we're describing something to them, we can visualize a lot of this stuff almost that AI is creating, but we can't necessarily verbally articulate it. And even through our mood boards or our vision boards or things like that, and even sometimes all the way up to like renders and designs, some clients still can't quite understand what the full feeling is going to be like. So once you've chosen all those selections, what that's going to be like. So I think it helps them make informed decisions, and it saves time, and it helps you personalize spaces. And I reckon that is actually a really great thing for our industry because it's half the battle.
Oh, totally. And look, I understand it's something new. It's always kind of a bit confronting when something that is so powerful, like what it can do, like you just have to spend 5 minutes listening to any podcast on AI and it's like, oh my goodness, like they're coming to get us. But I think one of the things that I just like, we've been talking about this like throughout today, is how our job is to deliver a project that is going to make a client feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And there is no AI tool that is ever going to be able to do that.
No.
So I think like AI is such it is one of many amazing tools that we have in our toolbox.
Yeah.
And I think that we really, like, you really need to embrace it and get on with it kind of thing. And I think, as you said, I think there's parts of our businesses that it can really, really help with. And that visualization and the ability to like spit out a render that's like in a moment's time, like it is truly phenomenal. Like I think that helping clients visualize, and then like, on the admin and the marketing and all that kind of side of stuff kind of thing. But I think as designers, we're safe, but I think it just is going to help us run better businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm still a sucker for like old school things of like, I'm a very tactile person myself. So I still love showing clients or, sourcing materials and showcasing that, and, getting clients to really see it, touch it, find out how it makes them feel, smell it if they really want to. Like, those sorts of things. Like I love that kind of understanding and level and feedback and things like that. But I think it's so handy in terms of, like you said, like what it can do for our businesses and our ideas, and how we can showcase our ideas in a more succinct way.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And it is. It's just one of those things that it's like anything. Like even when the mobile phone came out, like I was the generation where I didn't get one till I was 18. And, my parents didn't really, I mean, they had like a brick, but they didn't really know the full power nor what it was going to become. Neither did we. No. And so, it's about embracing it, but like learning it and learning. And then I think with learning things reduces the fear and stigma around it as well.
Yeah. No, it's all very true. No, I'm a big advocate for AI.
Yeah.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much for joining me today. I have loved chatting. I love kind of hearing about how as designers we can make people's lives better. I think sometimes, people think we just fluff cushions and make things pretty, but We really do have the ability to impact people's lives for the better. So I loved learning more about that today with you.
We do. Oh, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited that I got to chat with you. I think it's brilliant. So, and I'm glad I got the perspective of sensory design with the world. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you for listening to this design dialogue. I hope you have found it full of inspiration and helpful information to take into your design studio. If you like the podcast and want to hear more, consider sharing it or writing a review, as it helps us reach more people, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to unlock the power of effortless studio management and elevate your design business to new heights, please follow the links in our show notes to see how more time to design can help you build a better business. Have a great week, and I will see you for our next Design Dialogue.